So we've just had a full moon in Pisces. It was conjunct Neptune in Pisces, so a lot of Piscean energy there. Is actually trining my Venus. So maybe because of all of this Neptunian energy, I was feeling a bit more sensitive, and it's really spurred me to make this video on a more sensitive topic. So this is our children indicated in your birth chart. And this really is something astrologers used to do. They used to predict everything that's to do with the cycles in nature and connecting with nature in that way. So things like women's cycles, getting pregnant, and planning when to plant crops and when to harvest. So it's very interconnected and goes back quite far in astrology. There are quite a few factors to consider. Obviously, your physical fertility, medically making sure that you can have children, but also in your natal chart as well, that can be indicated. It does indicate your constitution and your fertility, so we can look at that. As well as the overall themes of your chart, you really want to look at, see what's most important and most prominent in your life, the things that's really going to fulfill you. Maybe you have a really heavy, lots of planets in the 10th house of career, or maybe in the 5th house of children and what you will create. So if you do have a packed 10th house, lots of aspects, lots of planets there, then yeah, your life may have quite a focus and a drive towards your career and your image and your legacy. Or maybe a lot in the 9th house, so prioritizing evolving through studying and learning and traveling, and seeing the world in different views and different ways, that may feature very heavily in your life as well. Sometimes it's really good, it's really nice, especially with stelliums, which is 3 or more, I like to say 4 or more planets in the same sign or house, to really integrate and balance with the opposite archetype or house. So for this instance, if you have a lot going in the 10th house, and the opposite would be the 4th house of home and family. Or if your stellium is in Gemini, for example, then you'd want to learn a lot about the Sagittarius archetype, again, to help balance, because oppositions really work together. And the other thing to remember is you have your natal chart, your personality, your potential, that you were given for a reason. So it's really important, really crucial to look at what that is in your chart and what these opportunities are, like your stelliums, your north nodes, your chart ruler, and really understand what your life purpose is. So for some people that may be a north node in Cancer or the 4th or 5th house. And of course for everyone, having children is going to be amazingly purposeful. But we also have our specific life purposes that may not be to do with raising children. And we can do both. We can have children and still have another life purpose that we need to fulfill. But we need to look into what that is. We need to know about that. Because making the mistake that children are going to fulfill you and give you a life purpose is correct and also a bit misleading, because there could be something else. This is when people still feel something is missing from their life, or that life has more to offer that they haven't yet experienced. And it is really more complicated than that, than family or children or career is just going to be the thing that is your life purpose. It's a lot more complicated, and we each have a very specific purpose that we're meant to fulfill. And this really is indicated in your chart. Another thing to look at obviously is your partner's fertility and what their goals and natal chart looks like as well. And then you have the fertility of the composite chart, which is you and your partner's fertility together. You can be more fertile with one person and not another, depending on your synastry and your composite chart. And this is why some couples try for years to get pregnant, but then if they break up and say they have another partner and they fall pregnant right away, this is because of the fertility, the synastry between another person is different. And this really is just life. You know, you can be with your husband, your life partner, and be as healthy as a horse. Then if there's not these aspects that don't support fertility, then it may be a lot harder than you think to get pregnant. And this really can affect relationships if the goal is to have children. So when I say fertility, we look at things like your moon sign. This is for men and women. This is how you'll be as a nurturer or a parent. And it gives us information on how you were nurtured by your mother and how you see your mother, and what patterns you received and will pass on to your family through that conditioning. We also look at the 5th house and the 5th house ruler, because this is what we will create in this life. For men and women, the most obvious example is children. We also look at Saturn for how you discipline and parent your children, and your Venus sign, how you will give and receive love within your family and your loved ones. So we take into consideration the signs as well. So water and earth signs are more fertile, and we really want unafflicted aspects to your 5th house or your 5th house ruler. And Cancer is the most fertile sign, being ruled by the moon and the mother archetype. Cancer and the moon also ruling over childbearing, birth, parenthood, history, memory, our family, our safety, our security, cycles, emotions, and instincts as well. And Jupiter, the great benefic of expansion and luck and prosperity, is exalted in Cancer. For me, this is life's way of saying that we really grow and understand more about life and see the bigger picture and a different perspective through having a family, and understanding our role in it. So it could be just our own family that we come from as well. And harmonious Moon-Mars combinations are the most fertile aspect to look for as well. Mars represents the seed, springtime, initiation, action, erection, conquering, and the moon represents receiving and nurturing and holding and accepting. So other aspects involving the moon, like Moon Venus, Moon Jupiter, Venus Mars, are also fertile aspects. And Mars Venus contact especially as well, because these rule over the sexual hormones in the body. And in a man's chart, Mars Pluto will show the condition of testosterone and other male hormones as well. And we do need to look at Pluto and Scorpio in the chart for any hindrances in fertility, as this archetype also rules over the sexual organs. For women, the ovaries, and again, Cancer or the moon is also important as it rules over the womb. The 12th house is also good to consider because this also represents the womb, but in a more spiritual sense. It's the space or the consciousness or the spiritual realm that we come from to then be born into the physical reality as we cross over the ascendant into the first house. That's why the ascendant is so important and sensitive, because it's our first interaction and representation of us in the physical world. Transits as well also play a very important role in fertility because timing is everything. Women don't always sync ovulation with the full moon, but this can also help. A full moon can also indicate higher fertility, regardless of their time in their cycle. So you may natally not have any planets in the 5th house or aspect in the 5th house or that ruler, but if you've got the moon, Venus or Jupiter transiting through the 5th house or aspecting the ruler of the 5th house, then fertility is increased. And you can also tell how many children you have the potential to have if you have planets in the 5th house. The 5th house rules the firstborn, 7th house, secondborn, 9th house, thirdborn, and so on. So if you have 3 planets in the 5th house, then it can indicate you have the potential to have 3 children. It doesn't always mean that you will have, or it can't guarantee that you'll have 3 children, but it's the potential for it. And again, if you have no planets in the 5th house, the number of aspects to the 5th house ruler can also indicate how many children you have. So for example, you've got Taurus on the 5th house cusp, but Venus is the ruler. Venus is conjunct the sun and trining Uranus. So 2 children will be indicated. Twins can also be predicted with a lot of Gemini and Mercury aspects. And earth and water signs and planets are more likely to indicate a girl or feminine traits. Air and fire planets and signs are more likely to indicate a boy or more masculine traits. It does also just describe the characteristics of a child as well, maybe their personality and temperament, rather than if it's going to be a boy or girl or however many children it is. It's really your perception of your children and how you will see them and what role they have in your life, because this is your chart that we're looking at. Relocation is another thing to look at as well, because if you are struggling to get pregnant and you have not much going on in the 4th, 5th house or the ruler, then you can move to another place that maybe where the moon would be heavily featured. Maybe it's on the ascendant in the 4th or 5th house, or aspecting any of the angles, or maybe having a Cancer ascendant in a different location will make you more fertile. Because the only thing that changes with a relocation chart is the ascendant sign, the experiences that you have to the outside world, and which houses the planets will reside in, emphasizing that area of life. Your progress chart as well, this is another thing you can look at for children, for fertility, to see when maybe children or family will be highly featured. And this again can be usually seen by the moon. The moon is really the fastest moving planet in the progress chart. We look a lot at the moon. If it's coming up to make a major aspect, that would be something you would look at. So maybe it's coming up to conjunct Ceres, the other mother or maternal archetype. I've also seen the progressed moon opposite Venus as an indicator of conceiving and childbirth, as well as the moon progressing through the 5th house, and also making any major aspects to any benefic like Jupiter or even conjunct the ascendant. I've also noticed Jupiter transiting through the 1st house can mean getting pregnant as well, because it really expands, it inflates and makes room for new growth. And the 1st house is the physical body. And there really are hundreds of indicators of getting pregnant and having children featured in your chart through transits and progressions. And I can't possibly list them all here, but these are just the main ones that we're sort of pointing out. And you really do need a professional astrologer to have a look, because there are so many things to look for and pieces of the puzzle. You need to know how to fit them all together. And it truly is an art and a science. I would say the most important thing is to ask ourselves, do we want children and why do we want children? I don't always think this question is answered in the most conscious way, because having children is sometimes just something we do or find ourselves doing. But when we ask this question, it can actually show us a lot of sort of unconscious conditioning and patterns that stem all the way from childhood. And it really is important to understand. So we really want to understand why, and making the choice when and how and if to have children out of fear of what our parents or our family or society will think of us if we do or don't, or when and how, then that's not good. And really only we can answer that question, and we really have to dig deep and do our own self-work about that, because the more conscious we are about it, the more control and understanding we have about this very important and also unpredictable time in our lives. So I hope you like this video. Leave a like or comment, and I'll see you soon.